Overconfidence bias is our tendency to have overconfidence in our own skills, leading us to overestimate our ability to influence future outcomes, take undue credit for past success, and neglect the role of chance. We put ourselves and our capabilities in a more positive light than the evidence justifies. We inflate our role in successful outcomes and underestimate potential risk. It's like a superhero cape that we drape over our logical selves, sometimes makes us feel invincible. When we succeed, it's easy to attribute that success to our skills and intelligence. We become the heroes of our own stories. But what about the role of luck, timing, or a helping hand offered by others? Overconfidence can blind us to those important elements. The same overconfidence that leads to success can result in failure. It emboldens us to take on challenges that are beyond our capabilities or overlook warning signs. It's like trying to leap a tall building in a single bound without checking if we can actually fly. In an experiment, researchers recorded neuron activities when participants chose which of the two different snacks, such as a bag of chips or a chocolate bar, they would eat. Neurons in the medial temporal lobe, a brain region associated with memory, become more active when we make confident decisions. It's possible that our memories store not only what decisions we made, but also how confident we were in our decisions. This mental process appears to contribute to learning. We learn from our past decisions when we were confident in our decisions. This could perpetuate our overconfidence. Overconfidence bias is like a dazzling spotlight that can both illuminate our path and create blinding glare. The challenge is to use that light wisely, understanding when it helps and when it might lead us astray. Experts and professionals are particularly vulnerable to the overconfidence bias. Imagine a world-renowned opera singer stepping onto a stage. The audience is entranced, ready to be swept away by a voice that has captivated many people before them. But what's going on in the mind of the singer? Professional singers, particularly those who are highly trained and accomplished, have been found to overestimate their own vocal performances. They may perceive their pitch accuracy or singing in tune as flawless, even when it's not quite so. Why does it happen? Accomplished singers have devoted thousands of hours to honing their craft. This intense focus and success can lead to an inflated self-assessment. They are not just confident, they are overconfident. Being constantly praised and applauded can create a feedback loop, reinforcing that overconfidence. If everyone around you tells you you are exceptional, why would you think otherwise? Now, let's switch from the grand stage to domestic duties. In a survey conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic, overconfidence emerged regarding domestic chores and childcare. Here are the results. 24% of fathers believed they were mostly responsible for childcare during the lockdown, whereas only 2% of mothers agreed. 45% of fathers thought they spent more time homeschooling their children, whereas only 3% of mothers concurred. What's behind the stark disparities? People's perception of their contribution and what they are actually doing are two different matters. Overconfidence can blind us to reality. The saying, "My perception is my reality," only holds true in a world where you are the only resident. But we are inherently social, and each person's perspective and experiences are different. Paying attention to and understanding others' perceptions helps us as we develop mutual understanding. Do not allow overconfidence to cloud your judgment. Our memory is fallible. It's an archive of our existence, storing everything we've learned, experienced, felt, and thought. But like any archive, it's not immune to decay, distortion, or outright loss. When we recall a memory, we may find it fragmented, missing pieces, or blended with other memories. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces, and our brain does its best to fill in the gaps, often inaccurately. Sometimes our memories are not just incomplete, they are twisted or reshaped by our experiences, beliefs, and expectations. It's as though our past is seen through a distorted mirror, reflecting not what truly happened, but what we think or want to believe happened. What's even more startling is our unshakable confidence in our own faulty memories. We insist that we are right, that our recollection is perfect, even when faced with evidence to the contrary. Recent research suggests that our recollection of events was inaccurate about 36% of the time. How does this happen? How can something as fundamental as memory be so prone to error? And why are we so confident in our own memories? Memory is not a video recording that plays back exactly what happened. It's a constructive process where our brain assembles information from various sources, sometimes mixing facts with fiction. Our feelings and beliefs can color our memories, adding details or shifting perspectives. A happy memory might become rosier over time, while a negative one may become darker. What others say and believe can also influence our memories. If people around us insist that something happened a certain way, our memory may shift to align with the group's consensus. Insights into memory can have real-world implications. In the legal system, eyewitness testimony can be notoriously unreliable, leading to wrongful convictions or acquittals. In relationships, disagreements over past events can strain relationship when both parties are convinced their memory is correct. Memory is not a mere data storage system, but a living, breathing entity. It shapes our reality, influences our decision, and even defines who we are. Our memory is filled with errors and stubbornly held falsehoods. The next time you recall a memory, especially when you are certain about, pause for a moment and see if you are overconfident in your own memory. In experiments, when asked to choose a partner for a test, people overwhelmingly gravitate toward those who project confidence nonverbally. They prefer a confident stance, warm smile, and eye contact. What is it about nonverbal confidence that's so magnetic? Researchers liken nonverbal confidence to flirting with subtle signs. Nonverbal confidence is a way of saying, I'm capable, I'm interested, I'm here, without stalling it out, without making it explicit. It's a game of plausible deniability, a way to enjoy the allure without the risk of rejection or failure, just like flirtation. The charm of nonverbal confidence lies in its ambiguity. It's suggestive without being definitive, assertive without being arrogant. It's an art that draws people in, enticing them to take a chance. However, there is a boundary that should not be crossed. While confidence is attractive, overconfidence is repelling. Overconfidence is confidence inflated, distorted, and unchecked. It's the boast that goes too far, the claim that exceeds the reality, the promise that cannot be kept. Overconfidence is a betrayal of the subtle pact that confidence establishes. The planning fallacy is our false belief that leads us to underestimate the time and resources needed to complete a task. It's the voice in our heads that whispers, "This will be easy. I've got this," even when past experience tells us otherwise. It's that overly optimistic belief that we have everything under control, that our projects will unfold seamlessly, that deadlines will be met with time to spare. But then reality sets in and our carefully laid plans unravel, deadlines are missed, and what seemed simple becomes frustratingly complex. The planning fallacy is a blend of overconfidence and wishful thinking. It leads to missed deadlines and budget overruns. An effective way to combat the planning fallacy is to break up a complex project into many subtasks. We're generally better at estimating the time required for small tasks compared to larger ones. Remember, planning is not just about setting deadlines. It's about envisioning the journey, understanding the terrain, and preparing for the unexpected. It's about transforming the nebulous uncertainty of a big project into the concrete clarity of actionable steps. The relationship between holding power and developing overconfidence is not just a speculative observation. It's backed by empirical evidence. Research has shown that power does not just boost one's self-confidence, it only inflates it to levels that may be considered irrational or unjustified. In experiment, power holders overestimated their knowledge and expertise. Not only did they evaluate their own performance positively, but their judgment of others' performance took a more negative lens. Two surveys highlight overconfidence bias held by educational leaders. While 86% of principals believed they support teachers in innovative work or new initiative, only 45% of teachers agreed. The disconnect is striking. Nearly all principals, 97% of them, believed they could be trusted to handle parent complaints fairly, but only 64% of teachers shared that sentiment, and a concerning 30% did not think their principals handled complaints fairly at all. The findings suggest different perceptions between those in power and those they lead. Why does power lead to overconfidence? The root of overconfidence bias may lie in the psychological need to maintain high self-esteem and enhance social status. Being in a position of power naturally leads to increased self-focused thoughts. Do you still remember that in my earlier video on attentional bias, power shifts our attention from others to ourselves? Having power makes us pay more attention to our status, more attuned to how we are perceived, and more driven to assert our authority. But this self-focus and overconfidence undermines our decision-making. This is why relying on leaders' self-evaluations to judge their performance is fraught with danger. An overconfident leader may overlook potential pitfalls, ignore constructive criticism, or dismiss different viewpoints. Their inflated self-evaluation becomes a distorted mirror reflecting not reality, but an embellished image of competence and an illusion of control. Let's look at overconfidence and leadership selection. In a room full of candidates applying for a coveted leadership position, who usually stands out? Very often, it's not the most competent candidate who catches the eye. Instead, those who project an air of overconfidence are often perceived as more suitable for leadership. This trend raises serious questions about how we evaluate leadership potential. Does overconfidence really equate to ability, or are we mistaken bravado for brilliance, swagger for substance. Remember, in my earlier video on conjunction fallacy, we've learned that the probability of having a candidate who is both confident and competent is lower than that of a candidate who is either confident or competent. Ask yourself some questions. Do you ever overshadow others to look good? Do you dictate solutions rather than seeking input from team members? If you are excessively gratified by outshining others, it's time for some reflection. Is your desire to demonstrate superiority truly indicative of your ability, or is it a hollow facade that could crumble under scrutiny? Good leadership is not about standing apart, but standing with others. Good leaders understand this and actively seek to ground themselves in humility and empathy. Have you ever met leaders who forgo their reserved parking spots? By choosing to park farther away, those leaders create opportunities to interact with others, build relationships, and understanding that leadership is about people, not perks. Overconfidence often masquerades as leadership. It's important to discern the authentic from the artificial. Leadership is not about putting on a show of superiority, but about inspiring, guiding, and connecting with others. Remember, true leadership does not shout from the pedestal. It converses on common ground. It does not flaunt privileges. It builds partnerships. In the end, it's not about how good you look, but how good you make others feel and how effectively you can lead with wisdom, integrity, and compassion. When we think of experts, we imagine people who have rich knowledge and insight. When it comes to overconfidence bias, experts, rather than being immune, are more prone to overconfidence bias than lay people. There are two people. One is a seasoned expert and the other a complete novice. Both of them were asked to make a prediction on a particular topic. They may both get it wrong, but the expert is more likely to insist they are right. Why? An expert's identity is wrapped tightly around their specialized knowledge. Their ego swells with titles and years of hard-won experience. They've earned the right to be called a doctor or professor, and with it comes a sense of confidence and sometimes overconfidence. They've answered countless questions and solved intricate problems. How could they possibly be wrong? Experts may begin to see themselves as above others, distant from those with less knowledge. They may become dismissive, even fearful of being outsmarted by inferiors. The very foundation of their success, their expertise, can morph into hubris and overconfidence, blinding them to their own ignorance and flaws. It's a cycle where expertise breeds success, success breeds overconfidence, and overconfidence leads to ignorance and arrogance. The shield of expertise can become a closed-minded prison. In a world full of opinions and self-proclaimed expertise, there lies a curious breed of people, the BSers. They wear the guise of experts, boldly claiming knowledge in fields they barely understand. However, they are often not being dismissed, but often rise through the ranks, winning popularity and even professional success. In one experiment, researchers recruited over 40,000 participants from 9 predominantly English-speaking countries. The participants were presented with 16 mathematical topics and were asked to rate their familiarity on a scale from never heard of it to know it very well. What's the twist? Those topics, like proper numbers, subjective scaling, and declarative fractions, were entirely fabricated. Those mathematical topics did not exist. They were purposely designed by the researchers to expose BSers. To claim knowledge of those mathematical topics that did not exist was to step into the trap and review oneself as a BSer. Surely we think people must despise BSers, right? However, the study reported that BSers were often quite popular. They exhibited overconfidence far beyond their non-BSer counterparts. Could it be that their very audacity and bold claims endeared them to others? There is a gender divide. In the same study, men were more likely than women to be BSers across all surveyed countries. Their bravado were rewarded, making them more likely to secure jobs, promotions, and even higher salaries. A difference in socioeconomic status was also reported. Those from more privileged backgrounds had a more pronounced inclination to BS. Perhaps they had inherited this overconfident, pretentious behavior from successful parents mirroring societal definitions of success. How to identify overconfident, pretentious BSers? One way is to ask them to explain an issue in detail. Remember, BSers are those who are not experts but parade as experts. Ask how questions rather than why questions. For example, how to define X? How does X relate to Y? How do assumptions of such a causal relationship hold under all circumstances? Of course, we ask questions with respect, not aggression. Vague, incoherent explanations soon expose BSers. So next time you meet someone who seems to know it all, engage them with those gentle how questions. You may discover a brilliant mind or unveil a pretender. Start observing your decision-making process and those of others around you. See if you can spot instances of overconfidence bias. Please feel free to share your comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.